Canada still says immigration is essential. We need workers, we need growth, and we need people who want to build a life here. But the conversation has certainly changed. Permanent residents' targets have come down. Temporary resident volumes are being pulled back, and a lot of workers who came here expecting a pathway to stay are now realizing that pathway is narrower than they thought. And nowhere is that tension felt more clearly than in sectors like hospitality and tourism, industries that keep communities moving but often sit outside the government's top immigration priorities. So tonight, we're asking a hard but necessary question. Is Canada building a smarter immigration system or making it harder for the very people already working here to stay and contribute? There have been significant changes to the immigration system here in Canada between both Liberal governments, the Trudeau government and Carney's government. I'm joined with Mustafa and Judy to discuss this a little bit further. What do you guys know or have heard about the immigration changes that have recently taken place? Mustafa, what have you heard?
I mean, I've seen significant changes in immigration coming down. I just recently saw that Canada's population for the first time in a very long time has come down as well, which obviously rings some alarm bells across the country. But I think right now this is a necessary change that should have been done a while ago. But I think the government is on the right path on trying to configure out the system.
So when you say that, when you say change, what change are you referring to?
I think you should fact check that. I'm not sure if Canada's population has gone down. I think
by about 400,000
this year.
Population.
In 2025, yeah.
Well, I think immigration has come down, net immigration, but total population
dropped.
Look, I would in some capacity, I don't have that exact stat. We can pull it up, but I would in a lot of capacities believe that because we have a birth replacement rate of like 1.1 or 1.2. It's like one of the lowest in any G7 country. So we're not making enough babies is what I'll say.
And that's a sad reality. I think, we should be looking at, growing the family structure here.
Well, we demonize the family structure, but that's another episode. Forget that. So when you talk about changes, though, what kind of changes have we seen? So one of the things, I'll just address this. So one of the things that they did was the federal plan lowered permanent resident targets to 395,000 in 2025, 380,000 in 2026, and 365,000 in 2024. Their goal is that they want the temporary population of temp workers to be below 5%. Now, when we look at that, for the hospitality and tourism sector, for example, they're significantly reliant on temporary foreign workers. Part of the reason is because they are willing to work the $20 an hour jobs because they need to keep a job in order to stay in Canada.
Right.
Do we like that? I think it sounds pretty positive.
I think we're looking at the statistics and the policy in too much of a vacuum because the reality is that we have a high unemployment rate right now. And there are many young people who are willing and wanting and needing to work. So yes, I think immigration is absolutely necessary from an economic perspective. Obviously, I have benefited from Canada's immigration policy.
Sorry?
Are they wanting to work?
I think you can't...
Our generation of Canadians?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course they do.
Okay.
Of course they do.
And I come from that generation. All three of us come from that generation.
Well,
we all want to work.
Unemployment rate is determined by those who want to work, right? So those who are currently actively looking for work, and it's I think above 6% right now, it's not a good stat.
Yeah, it's about 7%, and then youth unemployment as of about 3 months ago it hit about 14% in Canada, which is
pretty high. Yeah.
Very, very high. So are you implying that temporary foreign workers are in some capacity stealing jobs from Canadians who want to work those jobs?
I wouldn't say that, but I would say that if we take a step back and look at things from a macro level, the unemployment rate is high. The people who are looking for jobs are there. So do we need to import more people to work jobs? I mean, it's difficult to
One of the things I struggle with is, as a government, we call immigration very important to our economy and to our growth because it is. But then at the same time, we make it harder for people. I was actually very confused when I heard this announcement. I mean, I knew that we could slow immigration, but I didn't think we were going to slow temporary foreign workers. We've got over 1.4 million temporary foreign workers basically coming up for renewal, and they don't know if they can get it. Well, the government also cut down their immigration staff by about half.
I think we're talking about a lot of different levels of immigration and types of immigration for sure. But one of the things is that the previous government's immigration policy has actually been unfair to immigrants as well and temporary foreign workers.
Mustafa, do you second that?
No, I think there's a wide range of issues that are going on right now. I just think given the number of temporary foreign workers that have been here, was a little bit too high for our current system that
Are we now seeing a gap between what temporary residents were told Canada offered and what Canada is actually willing to provide? So one of the things I found funny, I was watching this interview on CTV, it was an immigration lawyer, and they had made a comment about saying, look, we have the Canadian government coming out and limiting the temporary foreign workers and hopefully bringing it down to about 5% of the total population, which is a significant drop of hundreds of thousands. Mm-hmm. But the next day, Canada announces some sort of doctoral or doctorate or master's program to say, hey, everybody across the world, come here and school in Canada, get your schooling in Canada, come work in Canada. It's like, wait a second, but our temporary foreign workers are some of the hardest working people we have here in Canada. Right. Okay, hold on. I worked at McDonald's, okay?
You can't generalize. You can't generalize.
I'm just saying what I feel. I worked at McDonald's. I worked there for a year.
Sure,
I was 16 years old. Yeah. And I distinctly remember Indians and Pakistanis coming here on temporary and foreign worker were sleeping in the McDonald's offices just to work longer hours.
Not all temporary foreign workers from India and Pakistan.
No. I'm saying they're insanely hardworking. It doesn't matter the culture. Right. Most of them are insanely hardworking. That's my point.
To answer your question about the doctorate program, I think there's a massive shortage of healthcare. It's not even I think, it's a fact that we have a massive shortage of healthcare in this country. Right. We need doctors who specialize in specific areas of medicine, which we need desperately across all provinces.
Well, it's not even it's like just masters in general. Yeah. And all my point is that temporary foreign workers are actually incentivized to work even the minimum wage jobs because they need to hold down a job to stay in Canada and to get their permanent resident card.
Yeah, look, I think that the government wants temporary foreign workers. They've just recognized that they may have overshot it based on the infrastructure that we have, obviously, right? The sudden boost of immigration made up of all sorts of different types of programs have made our housing costs rise.
But then I hear hospitality and tourism, like I hear hotel owners literally complaining, saying like, I can't keep these people, my chefs, in the country because they have to go back home, and I can't find a Canadian chef to come be a chef at my restaurant or my hotel.
I think that might be regional. I don't think it's the same in Toronto.
I think the government needs to take a hard look on what sectors are hurting right now, which people are needed versus which ones who may have stayed past their stay. I drive through some remote parts of this province, and I've seen people riding bikes to get to their work, and I wouldn't even see them being there. They could be from Central Africa, they could be from Central America, they could be from Asia, but we need some of these people as farmers, as manufacturers, as doctors. But there's also an argument about maybe some of them have been too much in numbers, and the country just needs to shut down the system for a while to sort of reconfigure and reset things for the meantime.
Okay, but then economically, when we look at that, we say, okay, well, like, how does because I'm not just talking hospitality and tourism, like manufacturing is another one. Manufacturing is down 5%. We're practically in a recession in manufacturing here in Canada. It's a huge issue.
Why are we down 5%?
Well,
That's not because
when we talk about what's happening down south. Right. But the way that you combat that is you have more people coming into the country who are willing to work those jobs. I mean, it's a two-pronged approach. Like when you have manufacturing sector complaining, saying they can't get workers,
I mean, I think you can't generalize that, right? There's a lot of people who have recently been laid off because of the impacts of the tariffs and things that have been going on with the U.S., who would like to work and who wanted to keep working in these sectors. But immigration in general, nobody's saying that we don't want immigration. The government has capped it in response to the fact that we couldn't handle it with our infrastructure. And frankly, this whole push for international students, I have to suspect that it's also selfishly motivated because the amount of money that we were getting from international tuition to colleges and creating jobs with that international tuition, that all of a sudden is starting to dissipate now, and they are hungry to make sure that they keep
So
that
were
money.
some of those tuitions like covered by the government as well for people to come here and they could receive grants, that sort of thing?
So very rarely.
Not really.
Very rarely?
Very rarely.
Okay.
Like, they were paying 4 times the tuition from us, so the universities were happy. Like they were relying on them as their main business model.
Did we see tuition prices go higher?
Yes, they have. They have gone up now. Like they've removed the cap, and then now they're also removing the funding for OSAP as well. So these are many factors and many industries across.
Remove the funding, but they decrease.
Yeah, they're defunding or decreasing the funding for OSAP, which hurts a lot of the students locally as well. You are now disincentivizing students to go to school and work harder. it's not helping us out either
Okay,
way,
so
right?
but when we go back to like immigrant, like here's where do we agree, just with 20 seconds left here on this segment, that it's a two-pronged approach? Like when you limit immigration, you do make it harder on the Canadian economy, versus when you don't limit immigration, you make it harder on Canadian citizens?
This is my final thing to say about that. If you have a productive and booming economy, then immigration works in large numbers. If your economy is unproductive and reliant on temporary boosts of foreign tuition money, then it is a self-funding hole that you just can't recover from.
I'ma rule the world, yeah.
Here's just one example on immigration. We talk about hospitality being treated like a low priority sector, even though it is a major employer and a core part of local economies. So you had made a comment to me, you said, well, I don't know if that's necessary, the whole chef thing. I don't know if that's an issue in Toronto, but maybe in rural areas. Restaurant Canada came out with something basically saying, look, like restrictive immigration policies and declining immigration levels are significantly worsening labor shortages. And one example they gave was in rural, remote, and tourism-dependent regions. So that would also imply your Torontos, your Vancouvers, your Calgarys, that sort of thing. It does say that the industry employs about 1.2 million temporary foreign workers, which is about 6% of the population. So it's something.
Sorry, your statistics said rural areas that it's impacting?
Specifically rural, remote, and tourism-dependent regions. Toronto's pretty tourism-dependent.
I'd be hesitant to apply that we don't have enough people looking for work in Toronto, and I'm saying that anecdotally, but just based on the general Toronto unemployment rate and the fact that a lot of people are unemployed and would love to work a service job, I would be fact-checking that just once more.
Okay, so when we go back, Mustafa, just from a immigration standpoint, do you feel we're headed in the right direction with the way that we're managing this temporary foreign worker situation and also reducing immigration? Because Canada has a tariff situation down south. Could immigration help support us fighting against that?
So for short term, I would say yes, just to sort of configure out the system and reset it. And then for the long term, it's not a good thing because I think Canada does need immigrants. Like I said, there's certain jobs that immigrants can carry out immediately, especially when you as a business owner needs workers right now. You'd be looking at temporary foreign workers because local talent takes time to grow and you can't expect it to be overnight. So that's why we need people to be coming in their respective areas on their expertise to be helping us out in certain industries.
You said something interesting about productivity, which I really value and I totally agree with, is there some capacity in which our mass immigration policies and the Trudeau government almost hid the negligible productivity Canada actually has?
Yeah, and I think that's included in the whole tariff discussion is the tariff threats that Trump made, it just highlighted existing systemic issues and weaknesses within the Canadian economy overall. When you have housing prices that are 10 times somebody's income, something doesn't add up here. Right. So we are one of the least productive economies in the G7. Our problem, yes, we could talk about immigration, but honestly, it's more of a problem of economic productivity than it's about these little small side issues.
Well, we talk about like a housing shortage. And so I find this funny, and I don't mean to pull this too far away, but when we talk about a housing shortage, there's certainly no shortage of supply. And I say that because when you look at, for example, Toronto, you've got thousands of condos sitting empty.
Have you seen those condos?
Those aren't ideal condos. They're shoeboxes is what they call them.
You've got thousands of shoeboxes sitting empty, but the idea still applies. I mean, when we see that, it's like, okay, well, then maybe immigration wasn't necessarily the issue. Maybe it was our productivity. And so it's making us look deeper at our productivity.
I blame both previous Liberal and Conservative governments who didn't really work on expanding Canada's true potential into growing that productivity. And I think over-reliance on the US has also affected that as well. Because if you're relying heavily on one economy, then essentially we're going to be hurting our sectors to grow to their true potential, which has hurted our productivity.
Well, to that point, I'll say that we are one of the most natural resource-rich countries in the world, okay? And what do we have a lot of? We have a lot of oil, okay? And what did the previous governments do? The Liberal governments, they blocked pipelines from being built, and that would have shielded us from being unproductive, that would have shielded us from tariff threats, and would have enabled us to become a freestanding nation.
In 2020, but Biden did cancel that pipeline that Trudeau invested in.
He's a problem as well. Yeah. But when we talk about tariffs and when we talk about productivity, okay, I lost my train of thought.
Well,
but
okay, so hold on though. So on that point, like even just bringing that back to immigration, there are other things that Canada can leverage. I hear what you're saying around basically natural resources, oil, any sort of that kind. LNG, it's another big one. Liquefied natural gas manufacturing.
Auto sector.
Lumber, yeah.
Okay, great things, wonderful. But when we don't have the workforce to support it, like Canadians aren't working those jobs.
Our problem is not that we don't have a workforce to support it. We have manufacturing plants that are being shut down because of these tariff things that have been going on. That's not a problem of lack of workers.
And to Judy's point, I come from a city called Guelph, and Guelph is one of the hardest, most hit cities through the tariffs because it's a manufacturing town. Linamar is the largest hirer or employer in Guelph, and they're having massive layoffs.
What did they do?
Their combustible engine company.
All right, I've got to cut you off, but we'll get back into this a little bit more. I want to tie it back to immigration a bit. But what would a fair and serious immigration model actually look like in Canada? Let's explore it. Should Canada tie immigration levels directly to housing, infrastructure, and job market absorption? Here to talk with me about it, to finish off this episode, Judy and Mustafa. We're talking about the impact that immigration had during the Trudeau government on housing, infrastructure, that sort of thing. I know, for example, the Niagara region has a wastewater treatment plant that they significantly need repaired. And when you have an increasing population, you struggle with that. What did you guys see over the last few years? What did you feel? What was the impact of immigration on these types of things, like, for example, housing?
Young people can't afford a home anymore, and that's just unfortunately the reality at this point. I think Canada has always struggled to be, keeping housing catching up with the growing population. And while that's going on, I mean, you know what? Like, it's systemic problems with previous governments that's been happening. And right now, I think, given how we've worked on reducing immigration, that has relieved housing prices a lot. I mean, given we have empty condos in Toronto, thousands of them,
over 10,000,
and this has become like an extreme, like an opposite extreme of what we were facing about a year ago. So
I think we're conflating two things there. The lack of reducing immigration did not bring housing prices down. In fact, the reason why we have so much supply, no, it's not. The reason why we have so much supply is because the prices are unwilling to come down by sellers, so they're not matching the market. So there's no buyers for the sellers, as well as the fact that our economy, consumer confidence is low. So people are not willing to invest this money into first-time home purchases.
We're also in a recession, so yeah.
Exactly.
No,
so it's not that we reduced immigration, therefore housing has come down. While we have reduced immigration, we have also have Canadians who a lot of their equity is tied to the imaginary value of their homes. And I say imaginary because if nobody's willing to purchase it at that price, then it's not that price. But we're in a deadlock right now.
But sorry, yes.
No, we are seeing, so one of the things like on the pricing side is we are seeing prices come down. Mainly because, but it has taken a long time. Here's what I will say. It's taken a significantly long time. I had a friend who recently purchased a home in Niagara Falls for like $240,000 or $50,000.
Right.
And they're renovating it, spending about $50,000 on renovating it. And they're going to try and sell it for like $350,000, $400,000.
From a Torontonian, that sounds like wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sounds like a gold mine, I know. But, it is plausible. It is doable. When we look at even Toronto prices are coming down. The one thing, though, that I will add, though,
nobody's buying.
So nobody's buying, which is it's forcing.
That prices are coming down unless it's real. It's kind of like the stock market. Like it's not realized. So are prices coming down if nobody's purchasing homes?
Well, you would just basically look at there are people purchasing homes. You would just say, okay, well, there's X amount of people purchasing homes now at a reduced rate of 20% than last year.
There's
it's also supply and demand, right? Like
they're in a deadlock.
When you have a lot of demand, prices are going to shoot up, but then there's no demand because one, people don't have the jobs right now.
Don't you think though that this was we should have gone through this a few years ago? We should have this was almost, you said something before we started recording. This was almost prolonged. We knew this was coming. 2022 was absolutely insane. We knew housing prices were too high.
Yeah.
Even before that, the other thing too, when we talk about it, we used immigration to do what? To boost productivity because we weren't driving enough productivity?
Well, I'll address what you said. So a lot of people's equity is tied to their home. And there were a lot of people who made out with a lot of value in their home after selling their homes at double the price that they bought it at.
2022.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so everybody wanted to cash in on that. And when I talk about being an unproductive economy, if so much of your GDP is tied to your home valuation and selling and buying of homes, and we're at a deadlock right now where people are unable to purchase new homes, then you're not a real economy.
Immigration boosted that. Now that we're retracting immigration, we also have retracting home prices. We have retracting productivity, retracting manufacturing, retracting jobs. It sounds pretty concerning. Should immigration be something that we now lean on? It sounds like it's actually the time to lean on it.
No, because then you have what's happening already, which is the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Mustafa, what are your thoughts, just really quick?
Canada, number one, needs to invest in its own productivity across various different sectors so Canadians can get jobs at home. But that also means that we don't only rely on immigration, we also apply on local talent, rely on local talent here. So these are some of the steps that government should take step by step. And it's going to take a while, but we'll hopefully get there.
All right. Well, with that being said, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes.
I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, yeah.